Hello, orientation presenters. This is Mark Pontius, Director of Parent and Family Programs here on campus, and I'm here with Liz Walsh, our Assistant Director of Orientation and Transition Programs. We're here to share some pro tips for you as you prepare for summer orientation sessions.
Hi everyone! Today we hope to cover the topics that are currently listed on your screen. We'll give you a class profile for the class of 2023 and a brief overview of our orientation program. Next, we'll talk about some pro tips for the presentation you'll be giving at orientation, as well as resources our office will provide for you. This year's incoming class includes about 4,300 domestic students who will attend summer orientation sessions. About 200 additional members of the class of 2023 from our international student community will join us on campus in August. About 13% of the students in the class of 2023 are the first in their family to attend college, and about 39% of the class is from out of state. The incoming class has an impressive academic record with an average high school GPA of 3.78 and an average ACT score of 28.1.
And now for an overview of orientation. The goal of orientation is to help students really start to think of themselves as Miami students and about their role in the community. And part of that includes being more confident, comfortable, connected, and curious. Of course, a major piece of that is to register for their fall semester classes, but also so much more, right? We really want them to know about resources, but more important than knowing about an individual resource, to know that they can seek out help and that we as faculty and staff on campus will connect them to the appropriate area for assistance. They don't need to memorize the details of all the offices that can assist them, but rather know that help seeking is expected of our students on campus. We also want students to think about their membership in the larger community of Miami and Oxford, what it means to embrace and learn about those who are different from themselves, be challenged by viewpoints they don't agree with, and to learn about themselves and their own core values. Approximately 95% of our incoming first-year students bring at least one guest with them to orientation. Typically it's a parent, but also others who serve in a support-type role. Our goals for families who attend orientation are similar to those for students, but with a bit of a shift to focus on how the family member can support a student through the transition to college and during their entire time at Miami. A little bit about the schedule. Orientation sessions for students are a mix of large and small groups, time with their family and guests that they might bring, and time with just other students. Students and families attend approximately half of the program together. Before the program begins on the first day, there are some meetings for special populations, such as student athletes, our Scholastic Enhancement Program, and others. As many of you know, students and families are also encouraged to attend the resource fair on day one, where they meet and interact with over 40 campus offices and units. After students meet their orientation leader and peers in their small group at the beginning of the program, and families learn about living and dining on campus, the program focuses on an introduction to academic life at the university. Students learn about liberal education and meet with their academic divisions. There are also optional sessions that afternoon, including study abroad and math and foreign language placement advising. During dinner, students and families spend time reviewing information from the afternoon sessions and preparing for advising and course registration on the morning of day 2. After dinner, students and families hear from the One Stop and the Career Center and learn about key aspects of student life by watching and discussing vignettes performed by the Souls. Families then have an opportunity to mingle with other families at a social in the Striver Center, while students participate in group problem-solving activities focused on living with a roommate, campus involvement, health and wellness, and academic integrity. They end the evening with a social on Western Campus. On day 2, students meet individually with an academic advisor in their area of study, register for classes, spend some more time in their small group with their soul, and hear about the Dean of Students' office, about community expectations and our Code of Student Conduct. Families also hear from our Dean of Students' office, learn about supporting a student who lives on campus or a student who commutes, and have 2 rounds of breakout sessions on various topics. Students and families reunite for the closing session and are done with orientation around 12 p.m. More information and details about the orientation schedule can be found at miamioh.edu/orientation. A little bit about the staff, the basics. There are a staff of 24 student orientation undergraduate leaders or SOLs, as well as professional staff members who support the program.
As we move forward, we are going to spend some time talking about helpful tips to consider when designing and delivering your presentation. First, we'll talk about some small language adjustments that can make a big difference in presentations. In an effort to be most inclusive and representative, would like to suggest you use the language in the left-hand column on your screen instead of the language on the right-hand column. First, instead of using terminology such as newbies, kids, or freshmen, please use first-year students. First-year students is more inclusive in a couple of ways. The terms newbies and kids both suggest a youth and lack of maturity that we don't see or encourage in our first-year students. The term freshman also typically relates to credit hours, and first-year students are students who are attending college for the first time. The term first year allows us to recognize and see students who are truly attending Miami for their first year. Instead of using mom or dad or parents in general, we will use the term parents and families or just families. This terminology allows us to recognize all family types. Perhaps a student is attending orientation with grandparents, a sibling, or a family friend. In some cases, students attend orientation with high school guidance counselors or coaches. We will use the term fraternity instead of frat. This preference comes from the perceived notion that frats party a lot. Images of Animal House come to mind for me, while fraternity is more representative of the brotherhood, philanthropy, and community that does and is meant to be built within the fraternity community. We all know there's a lot of pressure on our students to choose a major. In an effort to take some of that pressure off, would ask that you ask questions like, what are you considering as your area of study instead of what is your major? The simple language adjustment indicates to students that they don't have to know exactly what they would like to major in at orientation and that they can still change their mind.
Often during presentations, presenters will make offhand comments, whether it's to fill space or to make a transition between topics. Here are some specific ones to avoid. None of these are really helpful comments, and they can actually sour a student's experience at orientation. For example, the first one on your screen. We really work hard to communicate that each orientation session is of equal value. Making the comment that this is the last session with an excited tone communicates that we are relieved to be done and may not be giving our best effort. The same is true with the first session comment, that they are our guinea pigs as we work out the kinks in the program for the year. Otherwise, it's important not to denigrate your own unit or other units on campus. And of course, please don't make offhand jokes about specific groups of students. They are typically overgeneralizations and not helpful in our efforts to create a diverse and inclusive community at Miami.
Now, we'd like to shift our focus to some pro tips that we hope will be helpful as you finalize your presentations for this year. During our 18 orientation sessions, our staff is constantly reminding one another that every day is a day one. And now we'd like to pass that on to you too. Even though we might be on session 10 and may have been asked the same question 100 times at that point, it's our responsibility to remember that it is the first time that our guests are hearing information or asking questions. During presentations, please avoid using acronyms and when possible, use both the full word or words and the acronyms so that students and families can learn some of the Miami lingo. For example, if I were talking about the student leaders in our office, I would say, please meet the Student Orientation Undergraduate Leaders, or SOLs. When available, which will be always in big rooms like the Armstrong Student Center Pavilion and the Shriver Center Dolaboy Room, it is our responsibility as presenters to use the microphone. Even when we think we're loud enough, it is important to recognize that we usually aren't. Plus, there are folks in our audience who may be hard of hearing or relying on an assistive listening device that is hooked into the sound system. Using a microphone ensures that the session is accessible. Along the same lines, if you have a question and answer portion of your presentation, please repeat any questions you get so that all audience members can benefit from the answer of the question being asked. When creating visual aids, please consider the size of the font you use. For large spaces, size 30 font or larger is best. As a presenter, it's your responsibility to end your session on time. The orientation schedule has some tight timing in it, so ensuring that students and families can get to their next session on time is really important. In regards to the schedule, please become familiar with the schedule so you know what your audience has heard about already and what they will hear about after your presentation. When you ask the audience if they've already heard about a topic, it makes our program seem disjointed and like we don't talk to one another, which of course isn't true. As Mark mentioned earlier, The orientation schedule can be found by visiting miamioh.edu/orientation, and we'll also make a PDF copy of the schedule available to you as we get closer to orientation. Occasionally, we have heard presenters suggest that family members complete campus errands during orientation. The best time for students and their families to visit campus offices is after orientation ends, around 12:15 on day 2 of orientation. In lots of cases, our campus partners are coming to orientation spaces to talk with our guests already, so campus errands are unnecessary. Plus, we want students and their families to stay engaged in the orientation program itself.
On to some additional resources. This year, we'll provide presenters with templates for presentations, relieving some of the burden of design and aligning with best practices, including accessibility. In the same email where you receive this presentation, there is a link to a Google Drive folder with these templates. All orientation participants are encouraged to use the Miami University Events app, where they'll find the Orientation and Transition 2019 guide. This guide provides a detailed schedule of orientation sessions, links to campus resources, maps of campus, and much more. We definitely encourage all presenters to also download this guide. It will not only help familiarize you with the orientation schedule, but also be helpful when you are asked questions by students and families. Another guide in that app is the Discover Miami Campus Guide. Discover Miami includes significant information about campus at large and is really bigger picture than the Orientation and Transition Guide. In the Discover Miami Guide, students and any campus guests can get maps, learn about campus resources, and the history and traditions of Miami. One final note, if a presenter needs to reach us in person during the summer, our summer office in Armstrong has changed locations. Beginning this summer, we're located in Armstrong 1082, which is behind Rowan in the East Wing.
Thanks so much for listening to our Presenter Pro Tips presentation. If you have any questions or would like to talk about your presentation further, please reach out to us. For more information about orientation on a broader scale, you may be interested in our 2 student-facing webinar-style presentations, Orientation Insights and Orientation Academic Advising Insights. Both webinars are available on the Orientation and Transition Program's website. Thanks again, and we'll see you at orientation.